I think we can all agree that last year was a huge year for PC hardware and tech. We had new GPUs from both AMD and Nvidia, Ryzen 5000 which set the new standard for desktop CPUs, as well as major console launches from both Microsoft and Sony. But today I want to look ahead into 2021 and talk about what new releases we can expect this year. And before we start talking about expected and upcoming releases, I think the first thing that most of you will be waiting on this year will be some of the hardware that released last year to actually be in stock. The demand for parts like the RTX 3080, Radeon 6800 XT, and Ryzen 5600X is still through the roof even months after launch. Supply is just nowhere near able to keep up with the amount of orders and pre-orders there are for these products, but that will change given enough production time. It's estimated that in Q2 of this year, store shelf and online inventory will be a lot more abundant. We can also hope that by then, the cryptocurrency mining epidemic that is alive and well right now will start to fizzle out, as that's where a lot of RTX and RX cards are ending up, in cryptocurrency mining rigs. If the value of those cryptocurrencies does plummet, or at least normalize as we saw in 2018, you can also expect a ton of used current gen cards on the market. But to kick things off with new hardware coming out this year, we have the RTX 3060 coming out in late February. This is going to be a little over a 25% cut down in CUDA core count over the $400 3060 Ti, but with a surprising 12GB of memory. The memory configuration will be GDDR6 just like the Ti, however it will be a lower bandwidth, with pricing starting at $329 US. This will make it the most affordable GPU between the current generation Nvidia and AMD lineup, although it will be a pretty considerable cut down versus the 3060 Ti when it comes to processing silicon, so the performance benchmarks will be pretty interesting for sure. Another card that we can expect soonish from Nvidia is the RTX 3080 Ti. Although this card hasn't been officially announced, it has been heavily rumored, with some board partners even listing the card online. This is expected to be a $1,000 GPU to compete with AMD's RX 6900 XT, and is also expected to have double the memory capacity of the standard 3080. That's stretching it to 20GB in total. So if you were planning on buying an RTX 3090 over the next couple of months, you might want to hold out there. No set release date for this one just yet, but I'd expect it to follow soon in line after the 3060. Then on the Radeon 6000 side of things, we don't have anything solid from AMD just yet, but given their current roadmap, the next GPUs in line would be more mainstream offerings like an RX 6700 or 6700 XT. Lisa Su confirmed that more mainstream Radeon 6000 cards would be coming in the first half of 2021, but that's all we really have to go off apart from some leaks. With these cards, you wouldn't expect AMD to stick with their 16GB memory capacity in this price range. 12GB of GDDR6 sounds a bit more typical, and in terms of gaming performance and price, they have the 3060 and 3060 Ti to compete against. But something I'm really interested to see from both AMD and Nvidia is what happens towards the sub $300 US budget end of things, and specifically whether Nvidia will drop the GTX cards altogether, or for the first time offer RTX hardware in a really affordable package. Personally, when it comes to a $250 GPU, I couldn't care less about ray tracing and the huge performance cost that would have even on these new GPU architectures, but DLSS at this price point could be a serious game changer. We've seen previously on cards like the 3060 Ti and 3070 how this can offer a huge frame rate boost in selected games and seriously transform your gaming experience. So given that AMD will likely include some form of ray tracing hardware in their budget offerings, just as they have with their current cards and next-gen consoles, I really hope that encourages Nvidia to do the same, but mostly for DLSS. There's a leak from videocards.com which shows a listing from Lenovo of an RTX 3050 Ti and 3050 in the context of Lenovo's desktop gaming systems, outlining a 6GB and 4GB memory configuration respectively. So alongside the hypothetical 3050 Ti and 3050, AMD will likely push an RX 6600 XT and 6500 XT to contend that budget segment. And based off of previous lineups, I think we can expect similar performing parts with more video memory, but with less overall features. But now let's shift over to the CPU side of things. So AMD is basically the standard right now with Ryzen 5000, and I'd expect that to continue through most of 2021, even after Intel's 11th gen Rocket Lake S CPUs. Intel has teased the successor to the 10900K, which is the 11900K, and it features 2 less physical cores. It's still based on the 14nm manufacturing process, although they are claiming up to a 19% improvement in instruction per clock performance. So even if they can manage to beat AMD in gaming by a few percent at the same price point as they say they can, they'll lose big time when it comes to production workloads. Dropping core and thread count here is a huge one, and they've likely done this to allow for higher boost clocks, but I really hope that that doesn't mean that they're going back to disabling hyperthreading on the i5s or the i7s. These Rocket Lake S CPUs will be compatible with 400 series motherboards after a BIOS update, which will also enable PCIe 4.0. For out-of-the-box support though, 500 series boards such as the 590 will also be launching. But outright performance aside, if Intel can manage to undercut AMD on pricing and availability with 11th gen, that'll likely be their best shot at clawing back some of that market share. As great as Ryzen 5000 is, it is kind of expensive and availability at the moment is pretty slim. What will really be interesting though is when Intel finally abandons 14nm for the 10nm Alder Lake lineup later this year. As per their CES presentation, we can expect that in the second half of 2021, but of course it's still way too early to be speculating about performance. Then roughly at the same time of the Alder Lake launch, we'll likely see a Ryzen 5000 refresh from AMD, similar to the XT series of CPUs that followed with the 3000 series. Current roadmaps suggest 5nm Zen 4 processors shipping in 2022, but before that I think it's safe to expect a 5000 series refresh to compete with what Intel has at the same time. This refresh might also mark the first step into a new socket from AMD, although I personally think that's unlikely, and they'll probably save that for the big jump to Zen 4. A Threadripper update is also expected this year, as it typically follows the Ryzen desktop processor launch by a few months. This is going to be super exciting for workstation users and those who need a 24 core, 32 core, or even a 64 core machine. Just imagine 32 cores on the Zen 3 architecture with that huge boost that we got in single threaded performance and gaming performance. The uplift from 2nd gen Threadripper is going to be absolutely insane. AMD doesn't seem to be in a rush to get Zen 3 Threadripper out there just yet, which is understandable. For one, they would only be competing against themselves, and two, they're having a hard enough time at the moment meeting the demand for Ryzen 5000. And on another topic, just as we saw in 2020, I'm looking forward to more mainstream case manufacturers stepping a bit deeper into actually small ITX cases. I still feel like there's a lot of room for innovation and creativity even after the launch of the NZXT H1 and the NR200. One case that I'm specifically looking forward to seeing come out is the SUPT Meshlicious. I think that case is basically going to be the benchmark ITX case for the better part of this year, and it really illustrates how there are so many interesting and simple ITX layouts out there that just haven't been explored yet. So that's a handful of some of the PC hardware that you can expect to come out this year, as well as a bit of a rough roadmap. And if I left anything out that you might be looking forward to, I'd love to hear that down below. As always, a huge thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.